Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome all of you to our lecture series of this week and the last is 440 seminar. My name is Alberto Vargas. I am the Associate Director of the Latin American, Caribbean, and Iberian Studies Program. And I'm going to pass that to Sarah Rip to introduce our speaker today. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am absolutely delighted to introduce our speaker today, Elena Rodriguez. Elena comes to us today via Zoom. She is born and raised in Yamhill County. She graduated from Dayton High School and went on to graduate from the University of Oregon. She is the president and winemaker of Alumbra Cellars, as well as a viticulturist for Rodriguez Family Vineyards. She's continued her education in the wine studies program at Chemeketa Community College. We practiced before this, but I'm still a little rusty. She sits on the board of the nonprofit AHIVOY, and she provides free education to vineyard stewards in the Willamette Valley. So please join me in welcoming her today. She is going to give us a lovely presentation with some photos, and then we'll hopefully have time for some questions at the end. Thanks again, Elena.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Alberto, for inviting me to be a part of this lecture today. Always excited and happy to be able to share my story, especially with an audience that I don't think I would be able to share, or get to here over there in Wisconsin. So I'm excited to be sharing this story. So like Sarah said, I'm Elena Rodriguez, and I was born here in Oregon. I am the daughter of an immigrant from Durango, Mexico. Our vineyard is family owned, first generation wine grape growers, first generation winemaker, Mexican American. My father was a farmer in Mexico though, and that's why he had a dream of having this farm here in Oregon. So I'm just going to start out real quickly, just sharing a little bit about myself and who I'm going to share a little photo of myself here. See if you guys can see this. So I grew up here in small rural town, Oregon. This is me at 5 years old, starting kindergarten. And I'm definitely a blend of being Mexican and American and loving Oregon. I love Oregon, but I'm very proud to be Mexican as well, just because my parents really instilled that in us as children. So I was very happy. So that was like my regular dress code that I would wear going to school as a child. But I didn't grow up in the wine industry, in the wine world, or having this goal of becoming a winemaker. I graduated University of Oregon with a degree in human physiology. And then after that, I went to nursing school and I graduated and I became a nurse. So I practiced nursing for about 10 years until in the middle of that, while I was gone from home, my father decided to plant a vineyard. So it definitely all started with kind of this dream that my father had. So it wasn't anything even growing up here, living here on the farm in high school. There was no vineyard here. It was grass, cattle. We raised sheep and goats. It was a ranchito that we all grew up on and took care of. So there definitely wasn't a vineyard. I wasn't exposed to that as a child in high school at all, or even in college because I was away. So it was my dad's dream of planting this vineyard. And he planted the vineyard this is him here, in 2005. He planted this vineyard in 2005. Like I said, I was already gone. And it was more a goal of his to have a crop that he can take care of and sell. So when he was thinking of that, I remember him calling me. I was living in Texas at the time, working down there, and saying that he was going to plant a vineyard on the property. And I was kind of like, Dad, he doesn't even drink wine. And I was just kind of like, okay, well, how are you going to do this? It seemed like a kind of a crazy thing to do. I think I remember saying that to him. But he did it. That was something that he really wanted to do. He's always been a person that kind of put his mind to something and would complete it even later on in life. I think he was here like 50, 52 years old when he had decided to do this. And he did it with the help of other vineyard stewards and other vineyard managers here in the Willamette Valley. He didn't know quite the vineyard owners or winemakers or winery owners, but he knew the people that worked in the vineyard, and that really helped him in succeeding and planting this vineyard in a proper way, in the way that it kind of led him to succeed. So with the help of other vineyard stewards, he was able to plant this vineyard in 2005. The grape that he chose to plant, because he just wanted to farm and had no intention of making any wine, was Pinot Noir. That's what sells here in Oregon. The Willamette Valley, the northern Willamette Valley in specific, is known for Pinot Noir. And we have not had any trouble since planting the vineyard in selling Pinot Noir. So it is in high demand even now, 17 years later. It is still in high demand. So I'm thinking he made a really good choice of planting Pinot Noir. And so that's kind of where that journey started of him, my father. He immigrated in the early 1970s here to Oregon. He met my mother here in Oregon. She's also Mexican and was a child of migrant farmers as well. They decided to stay here and raise their family. And it wasn't until 2014 when I decided to return home and help my father with the vineyard. It was at that point that my dad was kind of getting older. His health wasn't as great, and he decided to kind of retire that. And one of the options was to either sell the farm, which my parents worked really hard to purchase and care for, or if one of his children wanted to take over the vineyard. So I am the youngest of four. I wasn't married and didn't have children, and my nursing job was pretty easy. You could find a nursing job pretty much anywhere. And so I decided to move back home from Texas, and I started working part-time as a nurse and started doing vineyard work as part-time. And that was when I really quickly realized that vineyard work and taking care of vineyard really can't be done part-time. So I decided to start going to school again, and I went to Chemeketa Community College here in Oregon, which has its own wine studies program. It's one of the first community colleges to have a wine studies program here in the United States. It has its own campus, and it wasn't too far away from where we are. And so I decided to do the whole viticulture program there, get that, and also start doing some wine studies classes as well. This didn't come really like immediate, like, oh, I'm going to just start doing this and I'm going to start managing the vineyard, and I'm going to start taking classes. It really, the first year I showed up, I really realized how much skill was required to take care of the vineyard, and how much my father learned at such a late age. It gave me a whole level of appreciation, new level of appreciation for my father and what he established and accomplished. So here's a picture of the vineyard that is fully grown now. We have 30 acres of land and 15 acres of vineyard. My father planted 10 acres of it initially, and then my brother and I later on planted 5 acres. So it was during this time that I started working out here in the vineyard that I realized the work that is done in the vineyard in order to make a bottle of wine. That's kind of where I had an aha moment of like, I always knew wine, but I never really understood what happened in the vineyard in order to make that happen. And I started visiting other wineries in the valley. I never drank wine before this point either. It really was. I lived in Texas. There wasn't a wine country there. And it was until I started out here working here and really appreciating the work that happened in the vineyard in particular. And so I started visiting other wineries and seeing the wine and, visiting tasting rooms. And that was the first time I ever experienced that, even though I grew up there. And I realized that a lot of the narrative of sharing the story was a lot about the winemaking process and the notes and aromas of a wine, but it really eliminated the story that happened in the vineyard and the work that happened in the vineyard and the people that work in the vineyard. So I slowly started kind of thinking about starting my own wine label. It didn't really come quickly. I still was working part-time as a nurse and doing the vineyard part-time. And it wasn't until I met another winemaker in the industry that kind of encouraged me to do this. And he was an older gentleman that was getting ready to retire. And just out of the goodness of his heart, he reached out, and this is him here. His name is Stephen Carey. He already passed away, but I made my first barrel of wine with him. And it really was just him encouraging me to kind of take that risk, or that just kind of branch out there and start doing it. That's kind of how you have to do it. Just do it. I kept thinking about it and not doing it. And he kind of just really encouraged me and pushed me and gave me a place to do it. So we don't have a winery here in the vineyard, but having a location to make the wine was huge. So my first barrel of wine I made with Stephen Carey. And after that, I saw that it's doable, that you can make great wine out of these grapes, and I can do it. And so that's kind of where the journey of starting my own wine label and kind of thinking about that happened, with the encouragement of another winemaker here in the Valley. Oregon is very much known for an industry of being helpful, the wine industry being helpful to one another. So we always I've always gotten that. My experience in the wine industry since I started has always been very encouraging, very positive. And I've always seen it as, what can I learn from these other winemakers that have been doing this for 10 plus years? And that's kind of my approach that I have kind of made whenever I meet another older winemaker that's been doing this for many years. So when I started thinking about what I should name, or what the name of my brand, the idea behind it, I really wanted to focus on the vineyard, just because I did not see that anywhere in other tasting rooms here in the Willamette Valley. So Alumbra, it means to shine in Spanish, and kind of playing on words, I really wanted to shine a light on the vineyard and the work that was being done in the vineyard. So that's when I decided to launch Alumbra Cellars in August of 2019. We established it, my brother and I established it in 2018. Here's our logo. I'll just share that with you real quick. Alumbra Cellars, so it's kind of a sunset, and that's kind of what I decided on the name. So it is, I co-own this with my brother. My brother Leo does, he graduated from Oregon State University in business and finance, thank God. So he does a lot of the accounting and compliance and business side of it, while I do the winemaking, farming, and marketing and sales part of it. So together, we are believe it or not, the only Mexican-American family in Oregon that owns a vineyard and makes their own wine. So I hope, one of my hopes with us launching this and kind of holding on to our Mexican roots is kind of inviting other Latino families here in Oregon to kind of take that leap of faith and kind of branch into the wine industry. It is very much a wine industry that is minority white-owned, minority, very wealthy people within the wine industry. And it is true that it takes a lot of capital to start a winery. And so we really, our family operation, it really is this, bootstraps coming from our really hard work of these last 5 years from launching in 2018. But we've been able to do it, and it's just really been a family effort. It's myself, my brother, and my uncle, my father is there, and we've all just been able to come together as a family to really represent what the Latino culture is about here in the Willamette Valley. That's one of the things that we wanted to do with the brand as well. When I was thinking about the Alumbra brand, one of the things that we wanted to shine is the honorable qualities of the Latinx community here in Oregon, especially in the vineyard. We have a footprint at every single vineyard here in the Willamette Valley. And so the quality of hard work, of dedication and loyalty that we have to each other is huge that I've seen, especially just seeing that they kind of banded together and helped my father plant this vineyard back in 2005. We're a small Latino community here in Willamette Valley, but we definitely support and encourage each other. So that's one of the things that I really, that really stood out to me. And so when I launched Alumbra Cellars and my wine, I definitely talk about the vineyard and the vineyard work that's being done, but I also wanted to do more. I wanted to kind of not just own a wine brand, not just sell wine, coming from a nursing background and being somebody that I felt like I was doing something for my community, for the society. Selling wine to me was kind of like, what is there more that I can do within my community? And that's when I got in touch with the nonprofit AHIVOY. AHIVOY is a nonprofit organization that started here in Oregon, here in the Willamette Valley, by a couple of Mexican American and Mexican winemakers here in Oregon. And it specifically provides free education to vineyard stewards that are working out in the vineyard currently. And I sit specifically on the education committee, and we come up and we speak to the vineyard stewards, and we also speak to the employers about what they're seeing or what they're needing from their vineyard stewards, because the better quality fruit we have, the better wine we have. And the people that care for the fruit are the vineyard stewards that are working out there. And some of them have been working out there for about 10, 15 years and have never, ever in their life have had any form of education about how a vine grows, what the work that they're actually doing, why they're doing it. And I think for me, this program really just kind of values and shows them that we value what they're doing. And I think that's very much needed here in the Willamette Valley for the Latino community, just to appreciate the work that they're doing, because they are the foundation of the wine industry here in Oregon. And I'm just going to show a quick picture of the group from last year. This was the third group. So each of them work for a very well-known winery, wineries that have been here in Oregon. A lot of the winemakers and winery owners have been really supportive of this program. And it just kind of gave me more of a sense of community, that I'm actually doing a little bit more than just selling wine, but helping my community advance maybe in their position and at their current job, or even in this wine industry career. So that was just another thing that I really wanted to do with my wine brand, Alumbra, just to really share that as well. Along with that, when I started Alumbra Cellars, I really wanted to focus on marketing to a Latinx community, which, to be, I guess not to be surprised, or you may be surprised about this, I got a lot of negative feedback from people, even within my family, that I shouldn't just focus on the Latinx community. Or even with the name Alumbra, there are some people that you shouldn't use a Spanish name, use a name that other people can pronounce. correctly. And it just kind of was interesting to me. There's a lot of French names out here and that a lot of people cannot pronounce, but since I guess it was in Spanish, it was not, okay, but which was really interesting to me. So I really, really kind of felt like I really wanted to do this. There is not a winery or a wine brand here in Willamette Valley that is anything like us. Really, we are very unique here in the Willamette Valley. And so I really wanted to share that we are unique. We are a family ran. We are first generation Mexican Americans. I am a Mexican American winemaker that manages her vineyard and makes her wine, the only one in Oregon. So it was something that I really wanted to share. And currently right now, our target audience that has kind of ended up becoming part of our club member. We have a huge club member that is 80% of our club member is of Latinx descent. So, and for about 70% of them are below 40 years old. And just going to other wine industry talks here in the Willamette Valley, we are definitely an outlier because most wine clubs here in the Willamette Valley have club members that are above 40. They have 50% that are above 40 years old and do not have that 80% Latinx club membership. So, and it's changing. I know as a millennial Latinx, we just researching 59% of Latinx millennials really seek brands that acknowledge their uniqueness or that acknowledge their culture. So those are people just like me that I kind of knew that were wanting to see themselves represented within the Willamette Valley. The Willamette Valley is a huge wine country. And so we're the only ones really showing that and representing them drinking wine. And then the Gen Z population really valued, is probably the most diverse generation in history. So that was another thing that I really wanted to reach out more to the younger generation, the younger population. And also when my customers, my club members, like they're similar to our age, will come out, they bring their parents, which are, Spanish speakers, first generation, like are my parents. So again, I'm able to speak Spanish to them and talk to them about wine, or maybe talk to them more about the vineyard and the work that's being done in the vineyard. And it just opens up a whole nother conversation. And Alumbra has become more than just wine, which is kind of something that I wanted. I wanted a place for young millennials, Gen Z generation, kind of just to feel welcome out here in the Willamette Valley, and also appreciate this wine region as well, and kind of start making that more of their lifestyle. That was kind of one of our goals to do. And I'm happy to say that it's been happening. It's been launching from 2018 to now, and seeing that has been, and seeing it, and sometimes at some point, some distributors being told that it's not going to work, and it has worked. And that's kind of what's I'm quite proud of, that we haven't really changed our vision on that. And we hope to reach more places than Oregon. We're wanting to expand to Washington and California, maybe distribute in there. And every year we're growing and selling out of wine. So that's kind of the whole point of that. But that is a little bit of quick, brief recap from who I was, from a nurse coming to now becoming an owner of a small winery and running a vineyard. And we are currently in the middle of harvest. I'll share a quick picture of our this season's fruit is kind of absolutely beautiful. This is our Pinot Noir that we use for our red wine. The weather, as a farmer, the weather has been changing. It's mid-October here in Oregon. Typically, it's already raining and cold, and it is about 80 degrees outside right now and sunny. So it definitely has changed since my dad started farming. In the last picture that I showed you, let's see here. This is in the middle of June with a big storm and rainy. That typically doesn't happen anymore. Usually it's just, 90 to 100 degrees now in June. So that's another thing as a farmer that has been shifting. So let me get back to that. So yes.
Thank you so much, Elena. Is there anybody who would like to jump in right away and ask some questions? I know I had written down a few and you actually already answered one of them, but in your presentation, but I'll let someone else take the floor first. If there's someone else who'd like to toss out a question, you can just unmute yourself or you can pop it in the chat box. Okay, it looks like the first question has come in. How much wine do you produce each year?
So we produce about 1,000 cases, plus or minus, sometimes a little bit more. We're doubling this year, but the average, Oregon is a very small wine boutique producer. About 70% of winemakers here in Oregon produce less than 5,000 cases, believe it or not. There's like 3 big wineries that produce more than 5,000, but the bulk is very boutique winery focused quality. So we produce currently 1,000 cases per year and increasing from there.
Thank you. Well, I related to that, I guess, first of all, I was wondering where folks can buy your wine. Is there anywhere locally in the Midwest people could purchase it, or would they be able to just access it online through your website?
We do only distribute in Oregon. So our demand here in Oregon has been high, which has been great, but so the only place you would be able to purchase it is online, and we do ship to Wisconsin.
Wonderful. I had an additional question about the production, and forgive me please if I'm incorrect about this, but I've read that in parts in particular of like out west, let's say in California, that's in particular where I've heard about this issue of, like in the Salinas Valley, for example, there's a lot of spraying of crops, and then health problems that have extended to the folks that are working in those crops. And so I was wondering what it's like in your particular region as far as using pesticides and those kinds of things, and whether your winery uses those types of things, and if so, like what do you do to mitigate that for the workers? Because that just seems like that would be, given what you shared about how important taking care of your employees is and folks in the valley. I just thought that would be kind of an extension of probably the work you're already doing, but just wanted to ask about that.
Absolutely, Sarah, that's a great question. So my father was a conventional farmer. He used conventional chemicals, herbicides, pesticides, fungicides, and all that. So when I took over the vineyard, it completely changed. It was kind of hard for my father to let go of his farming style, but he did. He said, I took over it. So we are now an organic biodynamic farm. We are herbicide free. We don't spray any pesticides. We rely on beneficials and a balance of pests to take care of each other. We do spray some fungicides, but organic ones only when necessary. So, and we are a dry farm. I don't mind weeds. They don't do anything. It's just all aesthetic, I believe. And we are huge on preserving and having our topsoil to be healthy. We don't till as well. We're very low till, only if necessary. That becomes necessary when there's a lot of voles or mold damage in the vineyard. I did till maybe about three rows this last year because it's been really hot and there's been just an infestation of voles and moles. But we also do that for carbon sequestration. So to help always have a green floor as well. And so and number one reason why I did that, it's not very cost beneficial for us as a small farm, But number one, I work out there, my family works out there, and my workers work out there. And the more exposure we have to these dangerous chemicals that farmers spray, even leakage of like synthetic fertilizers into our water, those are things that people don't really think about. And so we don't fertilize with synthetic fertilizers. We use a compost. We have cows here on the farm, and we make our own compost. We make our own manure out of that, and we use like sick chicken fertilizer, things like that that go out into our land. So that is huge. I think that's really one of the number one things when people talk about being, supportive to their employees. I think that's the first thing that you should do, is this health-wise. A lot of the times we can't afford to provide, health insurance or those kinds of things. And so, however, for my employees, we do provide a stipend, but, bigger companies, agriculture companies, and that's the first thing that you can do to help with agricultural workers.
Thank you so much. That is fantastic. I love what you're doing personally. I think that's wonderful, and I'm so glad I asked the question. We have another question from Karen. She wanted to know, do you hire seasonal workers during your harvest?
We do not. So, but I always share this with other, people that ask that, or within the community here. Our business, farming layout, the way we work is very different, just because we have that connection with our workers. So we hire our community members that have lived here in the community, are part-time. We'll pay them directly and hire them directly, because that's how they get more pay, and instead of hiring contractors. So we don't hire seasonal workers. We hire just part-time workers with the community, and really try to focus on that, or just other from our full-time workers that we have. Sometimes they will, we'll hire their children summertime work that are in college or something like that, and we'll hire them part-time as well. So things like that. We really try to help more the Latino community within our community that are here, not necessarily migrant workers that go back and forth from their home place.
Another question that's come in from Andrea is, do you use social media platforms to sell your wine? And if so, how does social media impact your brand?
So, as being somebody that's focusing on the millennial generation and below, social media is huge. A lot of them are constantly on their phones. So we do Instagram and Twitter. That's about it. We are thinking about doing a TikTok though, for the Gen Zers out there. But it is huge. So we're very definitely active on social media, trying to just promote and share our story, be transparent in what we're doing. I think transparency is a huge one when it comes to wine and winemaking. I feel like it's like a mystery a lot of the times. Before I started, it's like a huge mystery, and people don't really share and talk about what they do. So we really open it up and take pictures and share about what's going on in the winery, what we're doing, and really fully show that part, because it's not a mystery. It's really a neat thing, I think, to see the whole winemaking process.
Any additional questions out there?
Yeah, I like the question. Well, first of all, thank you, Elena, for your story. This is really inspiring. It's really, really great. One question that I had is, how did you get the know-how to change your production system from conventional to organic and certified? And also, do you market your product with that in mind? I mean, do you get like a prime price for your product? How typical is that type of production in the area that you are, or you're more like unique? This is really innovative and really great. So I was just curious to see how did you get that idea, and how do you learn how to do that?
So when there are biodynamic and organic farmers here in Oregon. As being, like I said, we're more of a boutique, small farmer vineyard style of farming compared to Washington and California, which a lot of their farms are very massive, very big. Oregon has really made, I think, a name for themselves in the small boutique size of their vineyards and wine production. So it wasn't organic. Biodynamic is nothing foreign here in Oregon. There were some that were like that when I first came here, but honestly, we have always had a organic garden, organic, orchard here on the farm. And it just kind of struck me as odd that why wouldn't we do the same thing in our vineyard than what we're doing in our garden? So I kind of just extended that further. But I think the only thing that really helped me in knowing how to make that transition from conventional to organic was going to school. Really going to the viticulture program and understanding what needed to happen. It's a whole transition of like 3 to 5 years, removing certain chemicals, supplementing with certain non-synthetic fertilizers, and not making your vineyard really crash or get overwhelmed by diseases. So you can't just completely switch from conventional to organic 1 year to the next. Your vineyard would probably just get full of diseases just because of the dramatic change of chemicals that you're taking away from them. So the idea behind that was just really slowly removing each of these chemicals and adding in organic slowly throughout the years. And now this year we are fully herbicide, organic, even reducing some of my organic fungicide sprays, which is really neat to see. So there was a huge plague of powdery mildew in Oregon this year because of the craziness in weather. And a lot of the organic biodynamic vineyards got plagued with powdery mildew. Fortunately, my vineyard did not. And I just kind of really relate that to our canopy management, which I think a lot of people don't realize how important it is. And who does our canopy management is our vineyard workers. So they will go through and pull, leaf remove, shoot position each shoot to make sure it's like fully straight in the line, so that when we do our sprays, it covers every single part of the cluster, of the fruit, of the vine. And being on top of that as well is huge in an organic biodynamic vineyard, because you don't have that many options when it comes to plagues or diseases out there. So that's another thing that is huge that a lot of people really don't quite acknowledge as well. You can spray all the organics and biodynamics you want, but if you're not physically managing and removing things that are not doing well out there, you're still going to end up getting a diseased vineyard. So it did take a process. It was like a 5-year process for us to eventually turn fully organic. And that's just, eliminating and introducing new homeopathic. I don't know if a lot of you know about biodynamics, but that is more of like using chamomile teas, cow horn manure that has been, buried underground, and spraying a 501 spray, valerian sprays, valerian root sprays. And so those are very much more natural elements of the earth that we spray as well. So a little bit more beyond organic, but we still do use organic fungicides at times.
Okay, Elena, we have a great question here from Catherine. She'd like to know, have you made connections with any other industries that also rely on Latinx workers, but have few Latinx families in ownership positions? For example, the Wisconsin dairy industry. Are there opportunities for building a network to shift that situation?
So through the AHIVOY nonprofit organization, we've really tried to do this. Prior to not working through this AHIVOY, there wasn't like a networking place for Latinx workers, for Latinx business owners, or any of that. So now that we started this nonprofit, a lot of our connections, a lot of people are reaching out a lot more through this nonprofit, and it's creating more of a networking environment for our vineyard stewards to feel comfortable to reach out to the next vineyard steward. Because we asked them prior to this, like, did you know your neighbor who worked in this vineyard, and did you talk to them? And they were like, never, no, we didn't know. And so this is open. We just barely, it's a 3-year-old nonprofit, so it's very, very new to us, but we've been making a lot more connections that way through this organization. And I think that's huge, because a lot of the times in my father's generation, it was more kind of, whoever worked hard and didn't really share that knowledge to help the other Latino. That I don't know. I think a lot of the times it comes down to, they were afraid that this person's going to take away their job. And we're trying to, it's a real huge cultural change that we're really trying to do within these agricultural managers, supervisors that work through here. And so it's been a challenge, really, but we're trying to change that and sharing this education, sharing knowledge with each other, and just letting them know that we're all here to help each other and build each other up. And together, this is how we kind of make movement forward. So it's fairly new, and that's what we're trying to do. So I haven't really been able to personally make these connections with other people, but through this organization, I think we're starting to open up that narrative and invite other Latinx owners and vineyard stewards to come together.
Thanks, Elena. I have another question about the farming. I wondered if you guys keep bees on your property or adjacent to them. I actually, my family, we have a small beehive in our backyard, and we produce, we have 3 hives. So it varies from year to year, but we also don't spray any of the, our vegetable garden or any of our trees. Nothing is sprayed. And unfortunately, every year, our bees, also due to our climate, but we can't seem to overwinter the bees. So my husband has to get new bees every year. And this year we didn't get very much honey because they developed some type of beetle infestation. So I just wondered, when you mentioned this homeopathic approach, I'm wondering if you know much about beekeeping, and maybe that would even be something we could apply to the beekeeping is, I don't know, but I'm kind of fascinated now to look into that. And I wondered if you know anything about that.
Yeah, so I actually do know a little bit, only because I've been wanting to get bees on our farm, just add another job to me, but it is, so biodynamics is probably the way to go, even if you're wanting to do beekeeping, just because bees are very sensitive animals and little insects that are just absolutely amazing. But we do have a beehive crew that I would go talk to on our neighboring property. So they would bring in boxes of bees and stuff, and there's clover that grows out there. So they would do that. And so I was just kind of curious and asking them. But I have seen a change, especially this year when I've kind of cut even more of our organic fungicides and have increased more our biodynamic sprays. In our garden was completely covered with honeybees, completely covered. In areas out in the vineyard, it was just ladybugs, dragonflies. I mean, just the beneficials that I ended up seeing. I really noticed that because I'm always walking out there. I really, really noticed the difference just visually and seeing these things out there. So there is something to it. Sometimes biodynamics can be a little bit difficult to wrap your mind around. It starts, especially if you start reading some of the really older philosophies of biodynamic farming, it kind of gets a little crazy. I don't really go too much into the moon and stars aligning, all that, but I do kind of enjoy reading about the homeopathic ways of spraying, just because it was something that my ancestors did. So my grandmother, my father being Mexican farmers in Mexico. My grandmother's Tepoan indigenous, so they did a lot of homeopathic things that way already in the farm in Mexico. And the way when I would talk about them, like, how did you farm this, or how do you farm this, and they would share about how they would do these things, and it's just kind of, I would ask them, well, why don't you do that here? Or like, why don't you do this here now? And it was just because of the easiness of being introduced to these, conventional sprays and things that they just decided to start doing. They were taught the American way of doing it, I guess. But so that I really enjoy. I really enjoy just seeing that difference between just watching new life come into the vineyard because of that choices that I've made. So yeah.
Thank you so much. That's fascinating. You and I can maybe follow up on email later about this. I'd love to pick your brain some more. So Alberto looks like he popped you the web address in the chat for the nonprofit you mentioned earlier in the presentation.
Thank you.
If anybody wants to check that out. We still have a little time if anybody else wants to unmute and ask a question or put it in the chat.
Elena, that curriculum for that training program that you have, like what does it include? That curriculum, what do they learn, and also are there opportunities for some of the workers like to get their GED or like expanding their education future?
Yes, absolutely. So it is just a basics of vineyard, introduction to like vineyard care and management. Nothing really skill-wise because of their skills, and they already know a lot. They really do. It's a bilingual program, however, so it is taught in English and Spanish. We do provide the materials in Spanish and in English. And so it's just very in general, but it does get into the winemaking process a little bit, just so that they get a full picture of what they're doing. Not just still sticking them into the vineyard and this is all what happens, but letting them know, like, this is the reason why you're doing this, and introducing them to the winemaking process, a few classes of winemaking, and doing the full circle of the wine industry. We do offer, if any of them want to, financial assistance, if any of them want to continue to get their GED, we definitely encourage that for them. And also just English classes as well. However, many of them already have taken English classes, but those two things are huge that we continue to encourage them to do. I think one of the biggest barriers of our vineyard stewards is just education, and that's one of the things that we encourage. Number one, there's a lot of scholarships out there, I think, in the wine industry that for like sommeliers and for WSET training and all that, but not specifically just encouraging the basics of a GED and going on to maybe a community college. That encouragement, no matter what age you are, we always tell them it will make a difference, and also just really, it'll be a huge example to their children or anybody else in the industry. So.
Thank you. I have another question if no one else pops in, but you mentioned that you have cows and chickens and that. How do you like incorporate that production stream into the vineyard? I mean, do you produce a little bit of cheese, or is more like for self-consumption, or for producing like organic matter, or what? How does that play in your operation?
It mainly is just for our composting, organic compost matter that we use, number one, and then for consumption. So my brother is the cattle guy. He'll take care of the cattle, and so that's what we mainly use it for. I am thinking of getting a few. I used to raise sheep when I lived back here in high school, of getting maybe a few sheep for grazers during the springtime out in the vineyard. That's a huge biodynamic component that a lot of biodynamic farmers do. And it's actually becoming really popular here in Oregon. So there's a lot of sheep farmers that will rent out their sheep to vineyards and they'll be out there in the spring, just kind of just grazing, mowing, and, you know, naturally composting out there. So that's kind of, I am thinking of doing that. So that's another addition that we might do.
Mhm. Great, great. Elena, have you been invited to some of the fairs in Mexico in sort of the wine producing areas like Aguascalientes or Baja California or Querétaro or that? Because I think your story is so inspiring and so great that I think more people ought to know about that.
Thank you. I haven't been invited to any of, specifically Mexico. I did, so one of the things that I really wanted to highlight, Alumbra, is just my Mexican heritage and roots, right? Since my father planted the vineyard. So I met a chef from Tijuana, Baja area, and she used to cook at the different wineries there in Baja California. And so she does pop-ups here on the vineyard, specifically highlighting different sauces and dishes from different regions of Mexico, and we'll pair them with my wines. And so Mexican food paired with wines is really not common here at all in Willamette Valley. So we've gotten a lot of attention through that. We've been featured like on the Sunset magazine because of those dinners that she does. And so she is from there, and she has invited me to go down there and just share my wines and just talk about my story, which is, you know, I really appreciate that. We just haven't done it, but she's known down there in the Valle de Guadalupe. And so maybe one day I should go do that with her.
Because I was actually thinking similar to what I think some of what Alberto was getting at here, that your story would be, or is, very inspiring, I think, in particular for young people, you know, from a, you know, ethnicity standpoint, or just that, you know, you're a woman who's in this industry, which I imagine is pretty male dominated, apart from also being an industry that, I mean, I know from a visit I did once to the Napa Valley area, it's sort of a whole other world out there, you know, very expensive and fancy. And it just seems like it would be an industry that would be hard to break into, and you're obviously very successful. So I'll follow up with you later too, but I was wondering if you wouldn't mind if maybe I shared this video with some folks in the career services on campus, and with I did reach out to Chicano and Latina Studies today too, to let them know about your talk, because they have a group of students that meet regularly for lunch, and I think they would love to see this presentation and learn about your story. So yeah, I really appreciate you coming and sort of coming to talk to us today, coming through cyber worlds, come and talk to us.
Thank you. No, thank you for having me. I get invited a lot to talk to colleges though. So I always tell people, I went and studied nursing. And here I am being a winemaker. So you never know where your journey will lead, and you just kind of be open to things that you don't really think that you would ever imagine yourself doing, and just kind of be like, yeah, maybe I should try just give this a shot. If it doesn't work, it's okay.
Yeah.
Tell them.
Can you see the chat? I want to make sure you see there's some really nice thank yous from folks for you participating today. Yeah. So yeah.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. It's great. Thank you so much.
Well, I'll let you know once we have the video posted up online, if you want to watch yourself and hear the presentation too. We can talk more. So I guess if that's all we have today. Thank you so much, Elena, and thanks to everybody who came to participate today. Have a lovely day.